AM 1700 WRCR Haverstraw, WRCR.com. And joining us now, as she does every Monday at this time, it's Tina Traster. She runs RCBizJournal.com, the Rockland County Business Journal, bringing you news and analysis and all sorts of stuff every day, every time of day, whenever you need it. Good morning, Tina. How are you?
Good morning, everybody in Rockland County. So many things I want to talk about today, so let me just jump in. First of all, I feel compelled to explain to the community that Supervisor George Hoehmann will not be running for election again because, in fact, he did lose his lawsuit, and term limits have been upheld by the court, as myself and other members of the press and anybody else who can read the lawsuit is aware of.
That's not exactly what he said this morning, though. I mean, I don't. What do we make of that? I don't know if you heard what he said this morning. What do we make of that?
I think he's in a sort of denier mode, which has become a popular way for politics to function in this country. I find it sad that it's dwindled down to our community here in Rockland County, but he simply just does not want to admit the defeat, and he would prefer to continue to drag the town through the court. With hearing after hearing. I can tell you, and you may already know, that the Republican Party already has its sights on a new candidate, and is out there. I'm not at liberty to say who it is, but there are people who I guess probably do know who it is, but they are out there collecting signatures for a new candidate because they can read the lawsuit. Look, this is the thing. The challenge to the lawsuit, the challenge to the law stands as written. The law was written, and the time to challenge it has lapsed long ago. That's the argument that Judge Amy Puerto used when she made her ruling. And the court hearing that's happening probably in 10 minutes from now is basically an administrative task to restore to the books, the term limits law. The town was never able to remove the term limits law with a 3-2 vote. That's what this whole thing was predicated on, that they needed the supermajority. Now, it is true that the judge did not specifically talk about the supermajority in her ruling, but by saying that the time had lapsed, by using the statute of limitations argument, she essentially said that the law is upheld, the law remains, the law is in effect, term limits are what Clarkstown has and will have to live with, and the only place for George Hoehmann to go at this point is to the appeals court. Sources have told me that he doesn't plan an appeal. It's complicated, it's expensive, maybe he'll change his mind. He just seems to be unable to admit that this is where things stand. But the lawsuit is very, very, very clear that term limits have been upheld, and that despite the law's requirements, that 4 votes were necessary to repeal it, that the town voted in January while the case was pending to repeal the law with only 3 votes. That's really what this is about. So Patrick Carroll and Frank Borelli, who became defendants in the suit in the first place, are going back to the court this morning with what's called an Article 78, simply to do the administrative work of putting the law back on the books. Because apparently when they took that 3-2 vote back in January, they went to the state and they had the law taken off their Clarkstown books. But that doesn't trump the fact that the law is the law, and that Judge Amy Puerto of Rockland County Supreme Court upheld the law. So, I find it, I guess, disturbing, to try to contradict what all the press can see is very plain on its face, and it's confounding, really. Do you have any questions? Is this not clear?
My question is what's the procedure that's happening this morning then in relation to all this? What's going on there?
Okay, so what's going on there is when they took the 3-2 vote back in January, they went to the state and they asked the state to take the term limits law off the books.
They meaning the town of Clarkstown.
Yes, the town of Clarkstown. I guess the attorney of Clarkstown did that. And the state removed the law. But that law was removed illegally because the challenge in court, on the term limits case, challenged the law as it stood, as it was written back in 2014. So the judge was basically ruling on a law that was standing, was still valid, and that is whether she was ruling on whether or not term limits would be upheld or not, and she upheld that law because it
Yeah. Okay. Continue. That's okay, Tina. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
that was our intern.
what?
Never mind. That was our intern. But so the law was upheld, and so now what is happening in court this morning?
Okay, so what's happening in court this morning is it's really an administrative task. It's called an article. They filed an Article 78, and they're going to court to simply say to the court, that the law has to be put, the term limits law for Clarkstown has to be put back into the municipal law, into the municipal code. That's what they're doing this morning. It's administrative. It will follow on the heels of Amy Puerto's decision to uphold the term limits. If she were to deny that this morning, then she would be reversing the decision that came down last week or whenever that was.
So if she does that, then that would mean that the term limits law is no longer in effect, as George Hoehmann thinks it might be as of now?
Yes, but that is not going to happen.
All right, but theoretically it could happen, you're saying, though.
No, I'm saying that it cannot happen because she is not going to rule against herself, because that's just not the way it works in court.
Okay.
Yeah. This is an administrative fix. Now, if she were to reverse herself, well, on the original ruling, that would really be something, but that would require a different prompt.
That would not happen at this morning's event.
That is not going to happen. That's not what would happen, and it would have to happen, as I said before, in an appeals court. And that's a whole different kettle of fish, because if they went to the appeals court, that's like I said, that's a whole new lawsuit. So that is not what is happening today. That is not where we are. If George Hoehmann continues to run in this kind of fictitious world that he seems to be inhabiting around this, ultimately he is not going to prevail. And I think it's just telling that the Republican Party has moved on, even if he hasn't. Now, with regard to the maps, that's another thing.
Right.
So the map situation, the judge in this case did uphold this new map, but she did so under a faulty premise, and the plaintiffs or the petitioners are trying to fix that too. Let me just boil that down. The judge upheld the map, but she did so because Kevin Conway, the town's deputy attorney, represented that a ward could have more than one council person representing it. Now, that is not true. In Clarkstown, the only town in Rockland County to have wards, there's only one councilman per ward. So there were some filings, I guess, late Friday from the petitioners, which again are Borelli and Carroll, to try to say to the court that there's an error in this ruling. I don't know where this issue is going. In one sense, you could say, well, what is moot is that because the term limits has been upheld, Frank Borelli is not running for his seat, and so he and Carroll are not going to compete in the same ward. But that's not the point. The point is that there seems to be an error in this latest ruling, and they have gone back to court to point out to the judge that there is this error. Now, the judge may say that the time to have done that would have been while the case was still being litigated and that they are too late. That is a possibility. But if she does that, she's leaving an error within this ruling. So in a way, that's the case to watch. That's what's more interesting and important right now, because there is still something that's unresolved about the adoption of the way this new map has been redrawn. Just as an aside, in her ruling on the maps, I found it interesting that she never addressed the cleaving in half of Central Nyack, which is Clarkstown's most racially diverse community. She never addressed that issue, even though it was raised in the lawsuit. So we'll have to see whether or not that gets fixed and how things move forward. But bottom line here is that all of this chaos, takes away from more important issues that need the attention of the people who are currently in office or who are running again in November. So this is. I did not plan on talking about this today. This is settled. I wasn't really going to talk about this. Couple things I did otherwise want to mention is the county is in the process of acquiring 26.1 acres of open space. And we know at least now that they have spent $4 million to buy 11 acres in New City for basically a wooded tract in New City well, if you do the math, it's about $363 per acre. So I've queried the county. They bought this land from the Davies family, but it is not the Davies farm. But the entity is called Davies Farm Inc., but it's not actually the farm.
It's not the farm, right?
Yeah, it's not the farm. So they've spent $4 million for actually almost 12 acres at 20 New Valley Road in New City. This is basically a wooded property with a small pond it's basically located to the west of Little Tor Road, and it's not clear to me why this parcel was targeted, why this is important. And there are two other sites that they are purchasing, and I still don't have the intel on that yet. But the county is going for a total of 26 acres to preserve.
Interesting. All right, Tuna, I'm sorry, we got to cut you off right there because we have a show coming up at 9:30. Folks can read more about that, of course, on the pages of rcbizjournal.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
Okay, have a good week.